From the moment I was born, I was told what I couldn't do, that I wouldn't live beyond a day, that I couldn't help provide for my family. But I fought, and I overcame. I'm running for state senate to fight for our communities, to fight for our economy, and to fight for our most vulnerable. If you want someone who will fight for you, vote Tom Queter for state senate. I'm Thomas Daniel Queter. I approve this message.
Paid for by Tom for 52.
I love that. Thanks. You guys know where you're at. This is Fire Nation with Robert Murray, and I am here with my friend Thomas Queter and Matt Lacey, my buddies. Tom, what's up, man? How you doing this week?
I'm pretty good. It was a good week, and it was a good weekend. I'm not going to talk about the campaign so much. I'm going to talk about Matt Lacey and why he's become my hero.
Well, that's a bit embarrassing, but hey, whatever you want to call me. I'm a modest guy.
Matt, I know you are, but every time I talk to you, you're telling me about somebody else that you're helping out. It sounds like you're a true and pure volunteerist. If you can help, it sounds like you will.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I spent about 6 hours today snow plowing with my four-wheeler. So, oh yeah, that's
awesome.
That was my day. What was that, Thomas?
Your neighbors' driveways?
Oh yeah, a couple of them are family, and then others are just neighbors, older people. I try to help take care of, make sure emergency vehicles can get in and they can get out if they need to.
I could definitely use you this week, Matt.
Yeah, we got about 18 inches.
Oh yeah.
So I have a crowdfunded wheelchair. Most people know this. Libertarians crowdfunded an adequate wheelchair for me when the government refused to provide one that was adequate and wanted to force me into one that would cause injury and a whole lot of other bad things. Now these chairs, I'm experienced with the brand for 23 years now, and I've had one over and over again since then. The controller decided to break down. It was having an issue. And Matt, who's a friend of mine, and I met on the internet, believe it or not, through libertarianism and doing libertarian things. He's a technical kind of guy.
Okay.
He's like, hey, I could probably fix that or look at it or do something. And Matt, you want to tell us your experience with the controller?
Yeah, so I started reading a whole lot of stuff about wheelchairs after I talked with Thomas, and he described his issue and got to thinking about it and said, all right, after I did that, I'm like, all right, Tom, we're gonna head out there and see what we can do about resolving the issue with his wheelchair. So I had some things. We've actually pinpointed it down to one specific part that it's at that point of failure. His chair's got some age to it. It's got some dried stuff going, and just things happen with age over time. They just start breaking down, and weird things happen. It's that's just part of life.
So, and if I remember correctly, it was the actual joystick module from the controller. Right?
Correct. It was your joystick. Is just the joystick is all bad. Everything else checks out, works fine. We got some of the stuff to come and go, and that just pinpointed me. Yep, absolutely, it's the joystick, and it's just a matter of trying to find some kind of replacement for it, which I firmly believe we can do.
That was what I was just going to mention. You had said you did all kinds of research. As soon as we pinpointed the part that was involved, you showed me that you knew the people who owned the patents and the schematics for that, and that they still refurbish and could potentially help, right?
Right. They both refurbish, and they might have a suitable replacement that specs out all the same, which would be, either way is great.
Exactly. Now, so right now, the controller is removed from the chair and awaiting the next step. So I'm going to make a phone call tomorrow to that company and to see, what was the name of that? Curtis Wright?
Yeah, Curtis Wright. They're out in California.
So I'm going to call them and see what I can get done. And that chair is no longer mobile. But yeah, here I am. Isn't that interesting? I'm in a mobile Omega Track, but that Omega Track, which is sitting in the corner over there off camera, is no longer working. You see, when that chair was crowdfunded, I was in a bad situation. I was in this chair, which had a lot of problems, and was breaking down routinely every so often, almost every day, for some periods of that, and it was nerve-wracking. It was terrible. It was a terrible living situation, and so I started purchasing used parts. I started using those with technical skills that I knew to get them to help me by making parts. So I had some custom made parts for it, and I have some mechanics who are friends, and they had started putting that all on and on together, but it wasn't quite working right. We never quite got it going, and in the meantime, the crowdfunded chair happened, and I ended up running for state senate. So it kind of just got paused and stayed that way. And Matt's here working on the crowdfunded chair with the controller, and he sees this other chair and decides to look it through. Matt, what happened when you looked that through?
Well, I mean, I told you before, my goal was to get you a second chair, so you always have a backup in case something does happen while you're getting one repaired. You can still get around. We all saw Spike pushing across the road, yelling "Anarchy!" So I mean, well, that's a great thing. It gets tough to move around for you in a manual chair, and for other people to move you around.
Yeah, it makes me sore. And you know what? Spike Cohen is not available for the entire campaign season.
Exactly. You aren't going to have a Spike Cohen there every day. So I got looking at it and started checking things out and seeing how things worked. And Tom had the wherewithal that he kept the batteries charged on this, so that he was trying to keep them topped off. So if he got somebody that could look at it and get them rolling again, it would be ready to go at that point. So, rummaged around through Tom's parts and started kind of checking out all the functions, because it was up on blocks. Literally, it was up on blocks. So you could sit there and play with it and see what was going on, and just started messing around and watching things work and seeing what was wrong with it. Say hi, Liz. But we after sitting there and watching how things were working, what was going on, I actually pinpointed like one of his last problems down to being there was a belt that, I don't know whether it had a broken band in the belt or something got caught in it at some point, but it was just really weird. There's this tensioner that moves, and it was moving all over. And we're like, all right, that's not good. So sitting there playing with it and feeling and seeing how everything happened and went. Finally, I pinned it down to that belt, and Tom, oh my goodness, the amount of spare parts Tom has that you can scavenge through on especially things that are easily broken, belts and some of his gears. He's got motors. He's got some older controllers which aren't the same, which is kind of weird with that particular brand, as they switched through several. It's not really weird, because they were making wheelchairs for, I want to say, under that brand name about 20 years. So they went through several iterations of controllers and joystick systems.
Yeah, so I grew up relatively poor and rural, and in a culture that if you have something that could be potentially useful, you just don't throw it away. I remember I said I'd had an Omega Track since I was 15. It's 23 years. When I got a new one, the old one had plenty of parts on it that were still good. And I knew for a fact it took 6 months or more to get a repair through the systems. Who wants to sit still for 6 months? Obviously, I got in the habit of saving those parts. And of course, for many months before the crowdfunding chair, I was actually hunting down parts. So it pays to have parts. And it pays to have parts in this case even more, because this isn't very individual wheelchair. Matt might be able to speak to that more, but It's got parts that other wheelchairs don't have. You can't just go to your random parts store and get something aftermarket that works, if you will, or it's unique. Matt, can you tell us all how and why is this chair so unique and durable and efficient?
Okay, so one of the biggest uniquenesses about that chair is that most wheelchairs are driven by two motors, one on each wheel, which controls your forward, your reverse, your steering. And part of that, and there's a innate problem because of that. You have two motors driving two separate wheels. They aren't always going to run exactly the same, so you're not always going to go in a straight line. Well, the founders of the company that built Thomas's chair, they decided to create their own transmission. So it's a transmission that the axles are locked together when they need to be. So you have one motor that actually drives both wheels. And then they have another very smaller motor that actually has another gearing system into this transmission. So when that motor starts turning, it actually makes one wheel move faster than the other. So rather than a normal wheelchair with two motors, two wheels, this is one wheelchair with one motor driving two wheels and one motor just doing the steering of those wheels through the transmission. And that makes that thing track very straight. And then they built this thing to do whatever the heck they wanted to with. I mean,
so let's explain what tracking means for those who don't understand. This chair was advertised as having an oil bath transmission, which it does. You change the oil on both of these chairs, and true tracking ability. And for those who don't know what a true tracking ability, particularly in regards to wheelchairs, is, I'm sure it applies to other things with wheels too. In most chairs, like what Matt was describing, the two motors, one on each wheel, independently, if you try to drive at an angle up a hill, the chair will straighten out because of the differences of force being applied to each motor and the motor being told to give equally. With this transmission system that this one has, which is extremely unique, no matter what, this chair will try to drive in a straight line if that's what you're telling it to do.
It's an amazing piece of equipment. I tell you, the engineers that built that thing are fantastic, and it's a shame that they don't build them anymore. It really is, and that's probably all due to, who knows, regulations and getting sued, and what other plethora of things put these people out of business that probably made, and I've read it many times, probably made one of the best all around wheelchairs you can buy. I mean, it'll go almost anywhere. It's a crazy piece of equipment.
I can attest to that. I like to take walks on washed out tractor trails in hilly central New York. That's not a place that wheelchairs go to typically, but I manage to, and that's my lifestyle. I also live in a place where the roads are smoother than the sidewalks, despite the state of New York roads. So what this chair is an increase in my access to the world, my community, nature. It makes places that wouldn't
your own backyard.
Yes. It makes places that wouldn't be accessible in other wheelchairs accessible because it has power, it has the strength, it can climb a 6-inch curb, it has a soft ride. That's the important thing for me because I have brittle bones, and the suspension on this thing is amazing. I have actually seen some wheelchairs made with faux suspension. Springs just tacked onto the outside to look cool as if it had suspension, and they didn't actually function. How many points of suspension does this have, Matt?
I mean, you got two different suspensions on the two different models you have, and one actually is very cool. It's a Goodyear Air Ride. So it's got airbags, which he can fully control how much they're inflated and deflated. and
Nice.
varying levels. It helps to raise him up or set him down. It helps cushion his ride depending on how inflated he has, so he's got some give and some cushion. And then the one he's in right now actually has springs and shocks. There's and those are all. I mean, they're still there and they still function. They function fantastic. I watched them driving the thing through the backyard before we left, and it was just like, wow. He was up over snow mounds and out in the driveway running around, and in the ice and snow and everything else that was there, and he wasn't having any problems getting anywhere. I'll tell you that, which is not common for a wheelchair.
Yeah, and it's got a low center of gravity, and it's durable. That means in a crowd, someone can't just give me a shove and cause me injury or put me in peril. A lot of chairs will just push or roll, and if somebody's rude like that, they may not realize that they're actually pushing you down, a step that's right there, or something to that effect. And it's important with brittle bones in particular to have some kind of protection. And unfortunately, groups of people don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're dealing with. You look at me, you see, yeah, I'm a disabled person, but you might not know how easily my bones break. And so you might do something that you didn't intend. I've been through that, actually. That's been a part of my life, being accidentally injured by careless people who don't know that my bones are brittle. And it's not truly careless. It's the kind of carelessness that able-bodied people normally treat each other with. I mean, you ever bump into somebody in a hallway or in a crowded area? It happens and people brush it off, but you do that to me, and you might hear my bones snap. So,
yeah, Thomas's threat to everybody else is watch your feet, because that thing is not light and it's going to hurt.
It can. I'm very with it. I'm very gingerly with it. I warn people in close proximity, usually if they're in a blind spot, because it has that kind of power. I do have to do that. But, what kind of power does an able-bodied man have when he's standing there, right? How easy is he to push over or knock down? And how well can he recover from a accidental bump, right? Quite well. And that's what this does. This makes up for that. It also tends to allow me to sit more appropriately, straighter, which is healthier. And it gives you a better physical presence. A lot of people notice that about me, that despite being in a wheelchair, I command a physical presence. That's because I sit straight up. I make modifications to my seat to make sure that's possible. Because a lot of chairs, as Matt can attest, this one is designed with the back of the seat much lower. And I actually have a riser put in there, a wedge, to make it more level. Because otherwise, you're constantly sitting in recline. How do you work in your garden when you're reclined? How do you butcher a deer when you're reclined? How do you even reach things on the shelves of the grocery store easily when you're reclined? It's interesting. This one, as opposed to the crowdfunded chair, still has more of a slant back because there was only so much that we could modify there. And I've already noticed I have trouble reaching things in this one compared to the one that was crowdfunded. And that's because it's just got a slightly more angle down in the back. And you'll see a lot of wheelchairs do that. And I believe that's incorrect. I believe we need to encourage people to sit up more and be more active. There's obviously cases of those with disabilities where it's not really good for them to be that active and sitting up like that. Maybe they're a little too weak, or maybe they do need to be comfortably reclined, right? That can be an option easily. But we should always offer the option of being able to be able, right? I mean, why are we going through the trouble of manufacturing and paying for a wheelchair and branding it as something that gives people independence, and then ensuring that it doesn't do that? And that doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. So this is a heck of a beast. The Omega Track, originally designed and manufactured by the Finch family. One of the sons of that family was quadriplegic from a motorcycle accident. He was an active person who suddenly, couldn't be active. And they were a family of engineers, and they made this, right? What tends to come from struggle and hardship? Innovation. Innovation comes from struggle and hardship, and those people innovated. They did a great thing, and we're trying to keep alive.
Oh yeah, and I think with the spare parts and just understanding some things now, regardless of what happens, I think we're going to be able to keep those alive for quite a few years without too much trouble. From what I've seen and what I've read and what I've learned, I think we can keep those things alive for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
That's why Matt is my hero, because I was struggling with some aspects of this, such as the transmission and the controller, and he specifically addressed those issues. Now, knowing Matt, having a friendship with Matt, Matt's generosity, Matt's volunteerism, his voluntary action. Mind you, he drove 5 hours to get here to stay the weekend to fix a chair.
Yeah, but the trip home was way longer.
We had a snowstorm, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we had a good one.
But that's the kind of thing we need more of in this world. People willing to just step out and offer the expertise that they have in whatever way helps, right? Matt, you've got a severely technical background. You want to let everybody know what you're experienced in?
Actually, I work in our maintenance department at our plant. Our plant's 100 acres, and what I actually work on is overhead crane remotes. I do a little work on cameras once in a while, a little work on card readers for doors. We also work on garage doors and the dock locks for trucks. I do quite a bit different stuff. There's oddball things that get thrown at us. Some of our own personal shop equipment that our maintenance department works on or uses, we have to work on when that stuff breaks down. So, it's always a puzzle when we get broken things.
And I noticed that when you looked at that chair, you were looking at it like it was a puzzle, like it was something to figure out. And I'll never forget it, Matt. You were beaming with a smile. You were almost giddy to go after the problem and find a solution.
Yeah, and you stared at me all worried.
Well, you get a little attached to the wheelchair you've been in for 23 years. It may not be the same wheelchair, but
And I don't blame you.
it was nerve-wracking, right? I'd never seen the inside of the controller. I'd never seen the inside of the transmission, and yet, here I am, letting a guy from Erie, Pennsylvania, whom I'd met once before, do surgery on my baby.
But hey, you ended up with one with a fixable problem and a second one that now works, fully functions.
I'm actually amazed at how well we did with this, because this is functioning at the peak function it ever had. I will reiterate, this one is not as good as the crowd-funded chair. The crowd-funded chair comes from a better date range of manufacture, but it also has more amenities like the airbags and a better seating system, which is more suited to me. But I'm not going to knock this one. I can complain all I want. That one may be a Cadillac, but this one's still a heck of a pickup truck.
Oh yeah, and it is the power, the way these things are even designed. When you look at them, there's most of the parts in the suspension, and he's got caster wheels. Even the caster wheels and the design of the casters, these things are beefier than most cars by far. I mean, you're talking a 400-pound wheelchair, another whatever a person would be in it operating, and the suspension is superior to a 2,000 or 3,000 pound car you see driving down the road. I mean, and just the way it's built and the framing, and it's the thing is impressive.
Now, we ran into some other things. Well, actually, you ran into some other things, Matt. This again was all you. In your research, you found that there were some other people looking to keep their shares going too. They loved their Omega tracks so much that they were also trying to keep them going.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Some of them have done kind of like we talked about, is we need to find other things. We resource people that we may know, and try to get things built or made in a machine shop using tool makers or whatever, we can try to find and reach out to. Also the controller systems. I've read several different ways that you can actually upgrade it, because that chair is so unique in its drive. Like I was saying earlier, you can't just swap any controller system into it. You have to actually start from scratch and create a controller system. And I've seen several different ways that people have done that. Actually, some people have taken them from, we've all watched BattleBots and the robot wars and all those kinds of things. They're actually taking the same technology, the same systems that they use in those robots, and they're converting them into wheelchair use. And there's actually some support community out there, from what I can see, on doing just exactly that, and trying to build in all the safeties that you already have, but still give you full control to do so many things, whether it's how smooth it runs, the accelerations and turning, all the different things that Thomas, being in the chair, understands. Like, oh my God, this is horrible because it's like jerky when it turns or whatever. You can smooth those things out and make very great fine adjustments to make it something that becomes so maneuverable that he has no, similar to what he has, that it is already very maneuverable. But those are the things you need to see. And there are other ways of replacing that. And I've showed Thomas some of that, and we've discussed it. And hopefully we can keep the electronics alive, whether, they all have to be replaced at some point or what. We'll see. That's down the road.
So, that's a good point. I'm always telling people, do the thing you can do, the thing that's in front of you, the thing you can do, the thing that helps someone, or the thing that brings more liberty. Matt did the thing, and he brought me more liberty. And he did something the state system as well. He did something our government won't, and says it can't. He defied logic and status quo, and reached out with his abilities and helped someone. So if you're out there and you're watching this, I'm going to leave you with one message for the night before we go. Whatever you are, whoever you are, whatever your profession is, you have some skills. There is something you know how to do that you can use to help somebody. If you have just a little bit of time, you can make a lot of use of that. There it is. That's one of my favorite memesters.
Yeah. Come on, do that again.
So,
wait.
So, the point is to do the thing, right?
There we go. Wait.
So if you're out there and you want to get involved in your local government, get involved in your local government. If you're out there and there's a cause that you want to pursue and support or help, do that. If you have a neighbor in need, help them. You have that power. Spike Cohen, our vice presidential candidate, always says, you are the power. You are the power. And I'm going to tell you, you're the solution. And that's why you're the power. The power lays in the solution. And Matt exercised his power to come help me. And now my life is dramatically improved. And my ability and reach in life is dramatically improved. One person took one weekend and his individual know-how, skills, and expertise and helped someone to a degree that I can't even fathom coming up with an appropriate thank you for. I will never have enough money to be able to thank him with money. I'll never have enough steak to thank him with dinners. I'll never have enough anything to thank him with anything. So all I can do is say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I can't even reiterate how much it means to me to have the longevity of my life, the longevity of my ability to do the thing back. Because that's what Matt gave to me, just by using what he knows to do the thing he knew he could do. So if you're out there and you know something and you think you can use it to do something, do the thing that's in front of you, the thing that will help.
Right. That's right. It can be so simple, and you never know that it could be so hard for somebody else. If it's easy, do it. Do it, do it, do it.
And to all of you out there who think Thomas can never repay me, all he's got to do is cook for me like he did on Saturday.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude is a great cook. And
Yeah.
yeah, I will say I was not disappointed at all with the meal. It was fantastic.
I'll be feeding you again, Matt. I'm sure of that, one way or another. And we are looking into having a campaign hog roast this year in June.
Mm.
I know the perfect Airbnb.
All right. Thank you, Matt, for being here. Thank you again, Robert, for being the guy.
More than welcome.
Oh yeah.
And again, Matt, thank you. I mean,
just hanging out with a bunch of guys.
I don't know how to thank you enough, Matt. But
No.
I think that's it for tonight, Robert.
No thanks needed. You keep doing what you're doing.
So I got to hit end, right? All right. Hang out for a minute.
Till next time, folks.